In this mini lecture, I want to give you a little bit of information about distinguishing between an informative and a persuasive speech. Now, you might be surprised to hear that although the persuasive speech is certainly more challenging than the informative speech, many students mistakenly use persuasive appeals in their informative speech. So here's a simple way to distinguish them. With the informative speech, you are the teacher. You are going to simply provide us with information. In the persuasive speech, you're the leader. You're still going to provide us with information, but you're going to take a position and try to convince us to change some behavior, some belief, some attitude that we hold. Now, with the informative speech, the goal is always to supply information and facts to the audience. This information can come in the forms of statistics, facts, or other forms of evidence. Now, informative speeches do not tell people what to do with that information. Their goal is for the audience to have an understanding of the information. Admittedly, an audience member may take that information and may take some action because they've been given that information, but that is not your goal as a speaker to have them do that. And lectures are often informative speeches because the professor is attempting to present facts so the students can understand them. Now, to contrast this with persuasive purpose, in here, just like the informative speech, persuasive speeches do use information. They have to use information. However, persuasive speeches are designed for the audience to not only hear and understand the information, but to use that information to be convinced of a viewpoint. Now, the end goal of a persuasive speech is not for the audience to just have the information, but rather for them to have a certain view or to take some action based on the information. Persuasive speeches may use some of the same techniques as informative speeches, but a persuasive speech is also going to use emotion to convince the audience. And if you've ever heard of the term pathos, and we will talk about that when we get to persuasive speeches, it's just another persuasive appeal that you're going to use. So with the informative speech, you're just presenting information. With the persuasive speech, you're going to try to take and convince the audience to do something. So let's look at an example. Just about any topic that you come up with can be developed into either an informative or a persuasive speech. So let's say that your general topic area that you're interested in is blood donation. And let's imagine that you are a regular blood donor. Perhaps you are hoping to get in the nursing program, or you've always worked in the medical field, and you feel well informed and passionate about this topic. Now, depending on what your focus is, I might suggest that you keep this topic for your persuasive speech, but you could certainly use it for an informative speech. So let's take a look at how we can take just the topic of blood donation and make it either an informative or a persuasive speech. So for the informative speech, your central idea could be something like, I want my audience to understand, and the key word there is understand. And in here, I always use a previewing central idea, so I would put my main point. So I want my audience to understand the history of donating blood, how different parts of the blood are used, and the types of conditions donated blood can be used to treat. And this would be a topical organization. You can see from that, on those main points, I'm just giving information about how did we come to a point where we can use donated blood. Maybe there's different parts of the blood that we use, and then what types of conditions can donated blood be used to treat. We are not asking our audience members to become blood donors or to take any action. Using that same topic of blood donation, I can also develop this into a persuasive speech. I want to convince my audience, the key word there being convince, that they should become blood donors because there is a shortage of blood. Blood donation saves thousands of lives, and donating blood can make you feel like you are contributing to society. Here we're using a statement of reason organization. It is similar to the topical organization. So we're saying that I want my audience to become blood donors, and here are the reasons why I want them to become blood donors. Same topic, but different purpose for the speech if it's informative versus if it's persuasive. So again, to compare. With the informative speech, you are providing us with information, but you're not suggesting that we do anything with that information. With the persuasive speech, you're still providing us with information, but you would also be using some emotional appeals to try to convince us to take some action. So an informative speech may cause someone to take action, but that's not your general purpose as the speaker. So when considering your informative and your persuasive speech topics, be sure to keep these distinctions in mind. With an informative speech, it's just the facts. With a persuasive speech, it's the facts, but you're also going to use an emotional appeal and a call to action to try to get us to change some behavior, thought, or opinion. And that's the difference between an informative and a persuasive speech.